There's a moment every parent fears, the kind where you turn around and the child who was just there a second ago is simply gone. For one family on a sunny afternoon in the summer of 1969, that moment lasted 3 minutes. Then it lasted the rest of their lives. A boy walked behind a bush in the mountains of Tennessee, and the world never saw him again. Every family has that one thing they come back to, a place, a ritual, something that threads the generations together without anyone really deciding it should. For one family from Knoxville, Tennessee, it was the mountains. Specifically, the Great Smoky Mountains. That ancient stretch of ridgeline running along the border of Tennessee and North Carolina, where the trees are so dense and the fog rolls in so thick that the whole park feels like it exists slightly outside of normal time. Every Father's Day weekend, the men of this family would pack their gear and head out on the same trail. The fathers and the grandfathers had done it for decades. It was one of those traditions that felt permanent, like it would always be there, always be safe, always be theirs. In the summer of 1969, the family decided to bring along the youngest member, a 6-year-old boy named Dennis. He was energetic, cheerful, and more capable than most people expected a child his age to be. He had been on hikes before, had some camping experience, and according to his family, he was not the kind of kid who scared easily. He had dark brown wavy hair, dark eyes, and the kind of personality that filled whatever room or trail he was in. He was, by every account, a happy little boy who was about to go on the adventure of his life. On June 13, 1969, Dennis set off with his father William, his 9-year-old brother Douglas, and his grandfather Clyde. The plan was a 13-mile loop, starting at a place called Cades Cove, moving through the trail to Russell Field, camping overnight, and then continuing east the next morning along the Appalachian Trail to a highland meadow known as Spence Field. Dennis kept up with the older hikers without complaint. He was wearing a red t-shirt, green shorts, and had every reason to be proud of himself for holding his own on a trail that had challenged far older legs. They camped at Russell Field that night, where they met up with family friends, another family they were hiking with, also coincidentally sharing their last name, though completely unrelated. The two groups ate together, rested, and the next morning headed for Spence Field. The meadow itself was well known among hikers in the Smokies, wide, grassy, with sweeping views and mountain laurel blooming in early June. People hiked specifically to see it at that time of year. By the early afternoon of June 14th, the group had arrived. The adults were taking in the scenery, talking, resting after the hike. The children, Dennis, his brother, and the other boys, were doing what children do when you give them a wide-open meadow, running, laughing, getting into mischief. At some point in the mid-afternoon, the boys huddled together and cooked up a plan. They were going to sneak up on the adults and scare them. Simple kid logic, pure fun. The older boys would go south and west through the tree line. Dennis, because his bright red shirt was too obvious, was sent in a different direction, northwest, alone, closer to the Appalachian Trail. His father William actually saw him go. He watched his youngest son duck behind a bush near the tree line, crouching, waiting for the right moment to spring the prank. William smiled. He knew what they were up to. He decided to play along. A minute passed, then another. The other boys burst out laughing, jumping out at the adults exactly as planned. Everyone laughed, clapped. It worked. William looked around for Dennis, expecting to see that red shirt darting out of the bushes any second now. It never did. At first, it felt like part of the game. Maybe Dennis was waiting for a better moment. Maybe he had found a better hiding spot. William called out his name, still half smiling, expecting to hear a giggle from somewhere nearby. Nothing came back. He walked over to the bush where he had last seen his son and found only leaves. He called again, louder. Still nothing. The smile was gone now. William moved west along the Appalachian Trail, calling Dennis's name as he went. He covered roughly 2 miles before turning back, heart hammering, because going further meant getting further away from where Dennis had last been. And that felt wrong. He came back to the campsite. Still no sign. No red shirt through the trees, no voice, no small footsteps on the trail. It had been 5 minutes since anyone had seen the boy, then 10, then more. Clyde, the grandfather, made the decision that the family needed to get help. But getting help in 1969 in the middle of the Smoky Mountains was not a quick phone call. The nearest ranger station was at Cades Cove, and reaching it meant hiking 9 miles through mountain terrain, alone, as the light was fading. He did it anyway. He arrived at the ranger station at around 8:30 that evening and reported his grandson missing. By then, the sky had already changed. A thunderstorm moved over the mountains with the kind of force that the Smokies are known for. Within a few hours, 3 inches of rain came down, the trails flooded, the ground turned to mud, and every footprint, every trace, every scent trail that a small boy in a red shirt might have left behind, gone. Park rangers launched an overnight search, but working in darkness during a heavy storm in that terrain is nearly impossible. When dawn broke on June 15th, a formal search operation began with 30 Park Service personnel. But word had gotten out, and people wanted to help. By that afternoon, the number had swelled to 240 searchers. Within days, it would grow into something the Smoky Mountains had never seen before and has not seen since. Helicopters were brought in from Georgia, 2 military Huey helicopters dispatched from a base in Macon. College students, firefighters, sheriff's offices, Boy Scout troops, and members of the U.S. Army, including 60 Green Berets, descended on the mountains. The Red Cross set up food stations. A base camp was established at Spence Field. The search area expanded daily, eventually covering 56 square miles. And through all of it, William Martin walked those trails himself, calling his son's name into the trees. During those first days, searchers found something that should have been taken more seriously. Tracks from a small child heading away from Spence Field. The tracks were moving strangely, as if one shoe was missing. They disappeared at the bank of a stream. Officials dismissed them at first, assuming they belonged to one of the Boy Scout volunteers. But then a shoe and a sock were found separately 3 days into the search. Nobody went back to reconsider the tracks. They stayed dismissed. The mountains stayed quiet. By June 20th, which was Dennis's 7th birthday, nearly 800 people were actively searching the mountains. His family spent that day the way no family should ever spend a birthday, walking the same ridge lines over and over, hoping today would be the day. It was not. The next day, the effort reached its absolute peak. 1,400 searchers covering the park, logging over 13,000 hours of combined effort. The National Park Service had already begun drafting a plan for what to do in case Dennis's body was recovered. They never needed that plan. Not because Dennis was found alive, but because nothing was found at all. Experts later pointed out that the sheer size of the search party was actually one of its biggest problems. People trampled over ground before trained trackers could examine it. Evidence was destroyed by the crowd before it could be identified as evidence. The park's own emergency manager would say years later that the Dennis Martin case taught them a fundamental lesson, that more people does not mean a better search. The official search was suspended on June 29th. The case was formally closed in September 1969. No body, no clothing, no confirmed trace. For something to disappear that completely, in a space filled with 1,400 people looking for it, felt impossible. And it still does. Then, weeks after the search ended, a man came forward with something that changed the shape of the entire case. His name was Harold Key, and he had been in the park on the exact afternoon Dennis disappeared, in an area roughly 7 miles from Spence Field. He had been there with his family watching wildlife. That afternoon, he heard a sound that he described as a sickening scream coming from somewhere in the trees. Not an animal sound, not a bird, a human sound. His family froze. His son looked toward the noise and said he could see a bear moving through the brush. But when they looked more carefully, it was not a bear. It was a man. Large, disheveled, moving fast and clearly trying not to be seen. The man had something slung over his shoulder. Something that looked like cloth. Something red. Key's family left the park that day without connecting what they had seen to anything. They found out about Dennis Martin days later when they got home and turned on the news. Key immediately contacted park officials and told them everything. The FBI reviewed the account and dismissed it. Their reasoning was that the distance between Spence Field and where Key had his sighting was too far to cover in the time between Dennis's disappearance and Key's reported sighting. It was physically impossible, they said. But a ranger named Dwight McCarter decided to test that claim himself. He hiked the route. He made it in approximately 90 minutes. William Martin hiked it too, at a similar pace. The FBI's impossible turned out to be entirely possible. What the agency never adequately explained was why they had withheld the Key sighting from the Martin family entirely. William found out about it through a journalist, not through law enforcement. Over the years, several explanations have circulated for what happened to Dennis. Each one offers something. None of them offers enough. The most straightforward possibility is that he got disoriented very quickly. The Smoky Mountains are not forgiving terrain for a small child alone. The ravines are steep, the streams run fast, and the tree coverage is so thick that within minutes of leaving a trail, visibility drops to almost nothing. A 6-year-old moving fast, maybe frightened, maybe going in entirely the wrong direction. It is not hard to imagine how that ends. And the fact that no body was ever found does not mean he survived. The terrain in some sections of the park is so dense, so remote, that remains could go undiscovered for decades. Then there is the wildlife angle. Black bears, bobcats, and wild hogs all live in that part of the mountains. Searchers found no physical evidence of an animal attack. No torn clothing, nothing disturbed. But officials at the time noted it had been an unusually dry summer, and animals in the area had been behaving differently because food sources were scarce. The theory the Martin family never let go of was human abduction. Dennis's father, William, believed for the rest of his life that his son had been taken, and that Harold Key's sighting was the closest thing to proof the case ever produced. That belief was not irrational. A man matching no known description, a red object over his shoulder, a scream, a timeline that law enforcement dismissed before it was properly tested, and information that was hidden from the family. Then there is the matter of what a ginseng hunter found in the mountains sometime in the early 1970s. While illegally harvesting ginseng, which is prohibited in the national park, he came across the scattered skeletal remains. He said nothing. Not to the rangers, not to the police, not to anyone. He stayed quiet for over a decade because he was afraid of being prosecuted for the ginseng. It was not until 1985, 16 years after Dennis disappeared, that he finally told someone. A ranger put together a team of 30 experienced searchers and hiked into the area described. They found nothing. Whatever had been there had long since been scattered further by weather, animals, and time. The case drew renewed national attention in 2024 when a streaming series revisited the abduction theory in detail, introducing the story to a new generation and raising the same questions the family had been asking for half a century. In June 2025, as the 56th anniversary passed, local news outlets obtained the full National Park Service case file and went through it line by line. The superintendent's own letter from September 1969 was in there, stating his personal belief that if Dennis was ever found, it would be within a few miles of that shelter near Spence Field. He has not been found. Not near the shelter. Not anywhere. What makes this case so hard to close, even mentally, is how fast it happened. Not over hours. Not over a journey. In 3 to 5 minutes, in broad daylight, surrounded by people who loved him, a child simply ceased to exist within the world's awareness. The mountains absorbed him completely, and the search that followed, the largest in the park's history, with 1,400 people and 13,000 hours, found nothing but more questions. Dennis Lloyd Martin would have turned 63 years old in 2025. His case remains officially open. His family spent years demanding answers that never came. His father, who ran 2 miles down a mountain trail screaming his son's name, who hiked to prove a witness account was credible, who fought for information that was hidden from him, deserved better than silence. So did the boy in the red shirt.